This episode is brought to you by Neo Books and Coffee. Neo Books and Coffee is an independent bookshop and coffee bar housing a wide collection of both English and Arabic books, and a coffee bar that serves and sells the finest quality coffee beans and exquisite teas. Hi there, this is Wafa Al-Abedat. You're listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Faye Sultan is a Kuwaiti swimmer who competed in the women's 50-meter freestyle event at the 2012 Summer Olympics as the first female swimmer to represent Kuwait at the Olympics. She also competed in the women's 50-meter freestyle event at the 2016 Summer Olympics, where she participated within the Independent Olympics athletes team. Welcome, Faye. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm in California at the moment, and this is my first conversation of the day, so I apologize in advance if my voice is cracking.
Why are you in California?
That's a longer conversation, but the shorter version is that I was working in tech in San Francisco, and then the pandemic happened, and so I decided to continue staying on here.
Do you feel the COVID chaos in California, or do you feel like life is just swimmingly fine?
You know, I think in the beginning, I imposed rules on myself that were like stricter than the government's rules. Then it was a bit chaotic in the beginning. I wasn't really leaving my house, and spending a lot of times inside. And then things kind of loosened up. And what's really nice is that California, there's so many things you can do outdoors that are very safe. So you can hike, you can surf, you can bike, and still maintain social distancing. So it's been I feel very lucky to have been here for part of this time, just because it's an amazing place to be.
There isn't any lockdowns or any curfews or anything set like that?
At the moment, we don't have anything like that. The middle of America is facing, a very tough time right now, but in California, we're doing okay, I guess, as well as, not great. No one's doing great except for Taiwan, let's say. But I guess, it's been treating us better than some and worse than others.
What I want to know is, Faye, before the Olympics, right? There was so much work that you were doing to prepare for those moments. We met you, this part of the world, or the world met you through your achievements of the Olympics. But before that, what was Faye like? Did you always love to swim? How did you get into it?
Swimming has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. So I started swimming when I was about 4 years old. And that's just learning to swim, doing some swim lessons, which I think it's very important for every child to do, especially if you're by the water. So people in Kuwait especially, put your kids in swimming, even if it's not competitively. And then I also think, so swimming was very much a very big part of my life, but I also did a lot of other things. I was very active, and I came from a very active family. So I did dance, I did basketball, I did karate, all the different sports. I was very terrible at all of them, with the exception of swimming. I was slightly better. So I stuck with that, and dance actually. So I loved dancing, and I continued dancing and swimming until I was about 12. And then I kind of had to make a decision and choose one. Yeah, so I chose swimming, and I think it was a hard decision because I genuinely loved to do both, and they're very different, and I got very different things from both of them. But I think the beauty of swimming is that it's, at least in the Middle East, it's more of an individual sport, and you can rely on yourself. There's a lot farther that you can go, I think, with swimming than maybe dance, especially in the region. And I think with ballet, there's certain schools you need to go to, and if you want to go on point and all that, and I didn't see necessarily a trajectory for there, whereas with swimming, I saw that there was a male trajectory, and that I could kind of follow suit.
Do you remember the moment where you had to make a choice? Was that a conversation you had a coach, or with your family, or just by yourself, to be okay, I see potential in this space and I'm just gonna fully commit?
Yeah, it was definitely a longer conversation. I was doing both, and definitely was doing swimming more seriously at that point. So I think dance was more fun, and I had to give up a lot of things and social activities for swimming to get up really early in the morning. So I think part of me wanted to stick with dance, but I spoke to my family about it and, just thought about the longer term picture. And honestly, my dad told me, sat me down, he's like, Faye, you're god awful at dance. This is not going anywhere. And I don't want to sit through another dance recital, because those dance recitals were like 3 or 4 hours, and like, it just, yeah. So I took his advice, which was great. And I think looking back at it, I definitely would have made the same choice again.
So you said you used to wake up really early in the morning. Was this when you were in high school or elementary?
It was more, I'm trying to think, middle school to high school. So schools in Kuwait start very early, I think because of the heat. And so I had to wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and swim from like 5:30 to 6:30, something like that. And then go to school, which started at 7:15, if I'm getting my times mixed up. So I had a very early days, and then I'd also go back after school and swim, so we had practice again at 2:30, and then sometimes I'd have to lift as well. It was quite challenging because a lot of times I had to do it alone. Sometimes there were other girls, it's a little bit younger than me, that would join me, a little bit older, all that. But for the most part, I did it alone. And part of the reason why I can get up early today, really instills a mindset, a morning mindset, or it makes you a morning person even if you don't want to be one.
Did you join like a swimming club? Did you find a coach or like a swim team?
Yeah. So when I first started swimming, I had a coach, and it was just me and him. And my mom would, she like cannot swim, and she's like one of those women that like, you see this swimming, they have like, their hair is really nice, wearing big sunglasses, and they want to keep their head above the water. Yeah, that's my mom. But she felt bad for me, and she wanted to support me, and she couldn't do sports growing up like I could. So she would get in and swim with me when I was like 8, 9. And then there was actually a swim team that I joined called Elite Swim Team, and I trained with them. They had an amazing setup. They had coaches, we had dry land activities, which for those of you that don't know is the workouts that we do on land, and then we obviously had swimming practice and competitions and stuff like that. So after that I joined the national team. I joined the men's national team actually, so I swam with them for a little bit, which was at first terrifying, and then definitely something that I got used to.
Was the intention always the Olympics, or did it start off as, there was like a local competition and a regional competition, or did you have a coach that really inspired you to be like, you could actually, make it in the big leagues?
When you're young, you kind of say things that you don't really know what they mean, right? Like you're like, I want to be a doctor, or like I want to be a lawyer, and you don't actually know what that entails. So definitely something I think I said growing up, and I didn't really understand the weight or of what I was saying. My first competition actually that when I was 8, I got disqualified from. So if that wasn't an indicator, I probably wasn't a good indicator of where I would end up. But not that technical, but I was swimming backstroke, and I turned on my stomach to finish. Swam with girls that were older than me, and so my parents were like cheering me on, so excited. And then on the scoreboard it said DQ, and my parents were like, yes, DQ, like, they had no idea what that meant, and it means disqualified. They thought like I broke some records, like very cute parents, when I literally just got disqualified. But I think, you learn. I've never made that mistake, again, and I think it's good to have these failures that you learn from them. And I've had a lot of failures, but I think it's all a learning experience.
What did you have to give up in order to put in that many hours of swimming? So before school and after school, did you have to give up, I don't know, like dating or having a social life or just having girlfriends? Or did you feel actually you had a good wrap around things and you had a well-rounded experience in school?
I think I had a very well-rounded experience in school. Like, I think I always say this, especially when I went to college in the States, the people I went to high school with were lovely human beings, and I look back at my time in high school and middle school, and I think I was just very lucky. I have always had a big group of girlfriends, and that's something that I would always recommend, trying to create, your girl gang. But they definitely helped me get through, and a lot of times I had to, say no to going to like parties or gatherings because I had training the next morning or I had a competition that I was leaving for. But ultimately, I think those parties definitely and gatherings tend to be the same at the end of the day. I don't feel like I was missing out on too much, and it was nice to go to them when I could. But I also felt like I was doing something that was, nourishing for me.
So what came first? Did the Olympics come first or Williams College?
The Olympics actually came right before Williams College. So I was 17 at the time. It was my first Olympic Games and I was terrified like any other 17-year-old would be. And it was an incredible experience. But I look back at that and I think like, oh, I should have done this better. I could have done that better, and I made a lot of mistakes leading up to it. So I changed my nutrition. Like I started seeing a nutritionist and I ended up losing like 7 kilos in 2 weeks, and I didn't need to lose 7 kilos, and a lot of that was muscle. So I lost a lot of muscle right before, and then actually, funny story, right before I was about to swim, they didn't believe that I said who I was, and so they pulled me from the lineup, and they said like, you're not, because my last name was slightly different, because I don't know, you know how it is, like you put like, you have 5 different last names, at least like I do. But so they didn't believe that I was who I was, and they said that you're not allowed to swim. So this was like maybe 3 minutes before I was going to compete, and I had been like mentally building. They removed me and they're like, you're not going to be competing. Like this is like, they thought like they put in like, like a doppelganger or someone that's going to like a Michael Phelps version of me that's like going to swim for me. But I think there was someone that I had swam with before that like vouched for me and they let me swim. But I had tears in my goggles, like walking up to the diving block. I literally had to hide the tears and like it was filled. But then I swam, and it wasn't my best swim by any means, but I did it and I did what I could in that moment, given all the emotions. You obviously hindsight, but
what are we not seeing? Like, what is the behind the scenes like of one of these experiences?
A lot of what goes into competing at that level is 0% glamorous. In fact, it's like negative glamorous, like the pools that I swam at, like I can't even tell you like the state of the changing rooms, like, it was a huge challenge, I think, in that regard. I smelt like chlorine for a very long time, because I spent 6 hours, up to 6 hours of my day doused in chlorine, obviously, and as much as like body wash doesn't remove that, unfortunately. So there's definitely a lot of commitment that goes into swimming, any sport. In terms of what you're referencing, I feel like the Olympic ceremony is very glamorous, and I think like it's an event like no other. Like the world's best athletes are together. It marks like a culmination of years of hard work and blood and sweat and tears and all that. And so there's a special energy and atmosphere there that's really unparalleled and you cannot recreate. Like there's something about it, of everyone being at the apex of, or just about to compete. And so I think that is incredible. And like you walk in and there's people that cheering for you, and then there's performances like Paul McCartney is singing, and you can see all these incredible athletes. So it is nothing like it, and that it was 100% glamorous. Leading up to that, the opening ceremony, definitely less glamorous though. So there's definitely a good combination of glamorous but also not so glamorous, and I think it's humbling to have both.
Did you get starstruck?
I tried to keep it cool around a lot of different athletes, especially like when I'm swimming, and I've seen a lot of these swimmers, you kind of grow up on a circuit. And so a lot of the swimmers that end up competing, I met at the Junior World Championships in Lima in 2000, and I don't remember when that was now. Wow, the years are, I think Corona has really messed up my timeline of like, I can't, like everything is just blurred together prior to this as well. But so I feel like I knew a lot of the swimmers growing up, and so my relationship with them was like very normal, but it was more like from other sports, like tennis players. Or the person I remember being like very starstruck was when I was in the London Olympics. The Queen visited the Olympic Village. Okay, she's not an athlete, or maybe you can argue she is, I don't know, but I remember like I was so starstruck that I forgot her name was Queen Elizabeth. So I just was like, Queenie, like trying to like scream from my room, my dorm room. And I remember being very embarrassed later, but she didn't really look up, so I think it was fine.
We're very proud to announce our collaboration with a brand that we strongly resonate with and are huge fans of. The Woman Power podcast will be sponsored by Neo Books and Coffee for our upcoming season 4. Neo Books and Coffee is an independent bookshop and coffee bar housing a wide collection of both English and Arabic books, stationery, and gifts. Their coffee bar serves and sells quality teas from tea pigs, and only the finest Arabica beans. They also have a coffee app available on both iOS and Android devices. The Woman Power Podcast is delighted to be working with our new partners and look forward to producing more meaningful content and recognizing our goals together. Watch the space for more exciting details. How do you stay motivated to swim? Like, how did you stay sane swimming that much?
With the swimming, you're right. Like, I am very social, and I think it's the hardest sport for someone that is social, but maybe actually it's the best sport because you're forced to just focus on what you're doing in that moment and not speak to people. And I can't waste my breath, literally. Like if I only have 10 seconds to recover, I can't be like chatting with the person next to me. I need to be like, inhaling oxygen as much as possible. I think there were times when it was definitely hard and it got very repetitive, but for what kept me going, or what was really helpful, was having goals and really trying to work towards those goals. Made it feel like I was, doing something different. And then also, if I look at I had different stages of swimming. And so swimming in Kuwait was very different than swimming in the States. And when I was swimming in the States, it became more of a team sport. That was a very different experience. And we were competing every single weekend. And that, like, in the first 2 months, I feel like I had competed more than I had in my entire life, so it was a very different type of swimming. So I think that also helped. And, I'm very lucky to also have traveled a lot for swimming. I can't remember exactly, like maybe I've competed in like 15 or 20 countries. So it's taken me to like Lima, Peru, to, all the way to Rio, Brazil. And so I think that also makes it
exciting for sure. I mean, you're talking about it and I'm just like, I've only been to I raced in Oman and I felt like new water. Like, this is so exciting. New weather, you know what I mean? It does feel, I see what you mean. So the excitement came from training in a group and I get that in a way. And I don't know why in my mind, I thought you would be like alone in the pool and, and it was dark and you'd just be by yourself. But of course you'd be with a team, because when you do it in a team, you're all there for each other. You can hang out before and after. You're all kind of connected to each other. You're looking at each other's times. You're giving each other feedback. So I'm sure having a community gets you through the loneliness.
Yeah. And I think when I was in Kuwait, there were younger girls that swam with me, which was great. But I think at a certain point, I needed other people that were that surpassed me, or that I could see a trajectory for. That made it a little bit harder. And some days I was that lonely girl swimming in a dark pool at 5 a.m. sometimes outside, and it wasn't even that heated. And so I had moments of that. But when one of my first competitions in the States, there was 500 girls in my age category, not even in my event, not a 50-meter freestyle. It was my age category. It was 14 to 15 or something like that, 50 freestyle. So it's just a completely different ball game, and it's really interesting to have had both experiences.
Was Williams College known as a swimming school? Is that why you went there? Or was that just a college you wanted to go to and then you just swam there?
It has a really incredible swimming program. The coach there is legendary, but I think it's known more for it's more of an academic school that has a really good swimming program. Yeah, I feel like I speak a lot about my family, but my dad actually went to Williams College. He was the first Kuwaiti to go, and I think I was the fourth. It's a very small school in the Berkshire Mountains, so people are always like, oh, Boston. And I'm like, no. I'm 3.5 hours from Boston, And the nearest supermarket is 20-30 minutes, very in the middle of nowhere, but beautiful. It's really good. I don't know if swimming drove me there, or if I drove myself there, but I think having removing those distractions was very helpful for me. There was no city, there was no shopping, there was nothing to do except for study and swim. And I guess it sounds I have fun. I don't want people thinking oh, she's so boring. I definitely have fun, and I love having fun, but I think I look back at it, I'm wow, that was so rewarding. And I want to find something now in this next chapter of my life that does something similar to that.
What did you study?
This is kind of a weird story, but I was a geosciences major, but I was on a merit scholarship to Williams, and they chose my major. So I didn't really have much say in it, unfortunately, which I think also is like another conversation, but that whole system needs to be revised. Because if you're going to like certain schools, that I feel like you should have a bit of agency in what you study. But I figured because it's a liberal arts college, you take just as much like many art history classes as math classes as psychology classes, that didn't really matter at the end of the day, which I think I still agree with.
Did they choose your major for you?
Yes, they did. It's a weird system, but basically they have a list of colleges that are quote unquote approved, and some of them make no sense. Like a random like law school in like a random state will be on this list, but like Harvard Law will not be on this list. But so it's just weird. Williams was on the list, but only for geosciences and like economics, which I didn't want to study. Or I think it was just geoscience, actually. I don't remember exactly, but the choices were very limited.
You know, tell me about your first job.
My first paid job, we're not talking about swimming, it was working at a consulting firm. I was a paid internship, and it was my sophomore year. And so I had to balance a consulting internship, and the hours were grueling, combined with like waking up very early. I did not get enough sleep, and I if there's one thing I'm good at is getting good sleep. Like I love like a good 9.5 hours a night, especially if you're that tired, like in training. Yeah, but I did that, which I think was a very good move looking back at that, because it helped me, you know, have something other than swimming on my resume. And then I've done like a lot of like internship type things or like odd jobs here and there, but my first like full-time job was working at a fitness startup in London, and that was amazing because I used my, you know, athletic background to get my foot in the tech world. And then, you know, since then I've also used my foot in that door to continue my journey into tech, where most recently working at a CRM startup in San Francisco. So been trying to get my foot venture more so into tech, and I've learned a tremendous amount so far, but it's definitely a new world and a new space for me, and I feel like I'm trying to like catch up a little bit.
What did you learn about your first internship in the consulting firm? Like what was like the one thing you walked away from like, wow, that's a lesson I'm going to take with me everywhere?
It feels like such a long time ago now that I think for me the problem was, or what I learned or what I could take away from that, was that you can do, you know, what you put your mind, what you set out to do. And I think like it was very intimidating working at like a big consulting firm that's like very reputable. Like it was intimidating to be around like all those minds, and I was still in college, and so there was a bit of a confidence like learning curve there, but there was also obviously like another learning curve just like being familiar with that work environment. And so I think just learning to be more confident in myself and really like work hard towards something definitely was solidified at that point.
Did you used to get paid as an athlete before? Because you were like, actually, other than swimming, this was my other paid job.
Yeah, I meant more like post-college and like some brand stuff that I've done surrounding that. That's more that. But I do think that there's so many things, like so many ways that swimming can be categorized as a job, that, you know, you spend so much time and dedicate, you know, hours of your life, and you compete for your country and stuff like that.
Is it hard for you going from a career where you are always active into like a desk job?
For me, like a certain level of endorphins that I'm used to from working out so much. I think I struggled in the beginning, and now I found somewhat of like a happy medium. But I was also very good about, you know, working out before work or working out in my lunch break, or, you know, trying to do things, you know, when I could. But that was kind of a shock to my system initially. And I think like in San Francisco, everyone has a standing desk. You know, you can like go on like walking meetings. Like it's a very tech culture that I like. So, and we have really good snacks. So, you know, I think that's like the superficial stuff, but it was definitely a transition in some aspects. But in others, I feel like I was pretty comfortable. Maybe it was like staring at the bottom of a line, staring at a computer. I'm like, oh, I can see the similarity in this. My dad always says, he's like, discipline is transferable. That's like something that like my parents have always said to like growing up. Like if you learn to be disciplined in one regard of your life, you can like transfer it and apply it. And so like hopefully like my swimming discipline can transfer into my career discipline. My dad and my mom are both like the coolest human beings ever. Like I think they're so much more fun than I am. It's like very like when my friends meet them, I think they don't want to be friends with me anymore. They just want to be friends with my parents.
Do you consider yourself an influencer?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I don't think of myself necessarily as like an influencer, but I do feel like regardless of, whether or not what I think of myself, like I do have a platform and that can influence people. I guess in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Like I think I go through waves like of influencing, where I, spend more time on it and then I like, freak out about how much time I'm spending and I want to get back my time and like do something like hike or like, something like that's actual real, like in real life. And so I think I come from, like I have two mindsets about it and I like ebbs and flows back and forth.
How does it feel to be getting like a monthly check?
It's very freeing in some regards and like it feels like I've worked for this, but it's also sometimes it's like shocking, you're like, wait, I've worked so hard and this is what I get, So I think it definitely frees up a lot. It also makes you like value, I think, money a little bit more.
Because of your background in swimming, you have to keep moving. You're always like hiking, you're walking, you're running, you're always kind of active. How can we get people to move and get hooked on movement the way you do?
There's like a different set of advice that I'd give to different like cohorts of people, but for people that aren't used to like moving, let's say, or it's not part of their daily life. One, I think there's a difference between movement and exercise that I've recently come to like appreciate. Exercise I think of as traditionally like you go to the gym, you're doing like a set workout, repetitions, lifting with a coach, like that. Then there's movement, which is like walking, cleaning, like not as glamorous. I'm just trying to think of like where you're just moving your physical body, but you're still getting that important like work. And I think that's the kind of that people need to find something that they actually love doing. And I think everyone can find something that they actually genuinely love, whether it's like yoga, Pilates, and like, there's so much out there right now, digitally that I think it's reduced like a barrier to access, and like people that feel uncomfortable like going to like a Barry's boot camp or like an intense yoga class can start it trying out from their home and realize that, hey, I can do this. Maybe they'll feel more inclined to do so later. But I think also having someone or like having a group of people that you can all like hold each other accountable, just like imitating a team setup in your life and saying like, okay, like here's my girl gang, okay, and here are my goals, and like this friend is gonna help me get to this goal by like on Wednesdays we're gonna lift together, or on Mondays we're gonna walk and do yoga, things like that, where it's like breaking it up and like introducing fun elements, and I think is really, really important, and obviously starting slow and moving your way up.
Do you have a goal now other than staying fit and healthy, or are you training for something?
I genuinely there's days when I'm like, oh, I really want to just be on like a couch potato and I really want to just, watch episodes of The Crown and not move. I think for me, like, I genuinely do love it. And I think it's like that type 2 fun that you were also talking about, where in the moment you're like, this sucks, but like, it's so much better. And like your mentality, your mood, like your whole day is so much better after you do it. And so that's enough of a goal for me, where it's like, wow, this is like a game changer, like a day changer. So in terms of fitness, I think it's just like definitely trying to like keep active as much as possible and, stay healthy and do all of that. But I do always have like smaller goals, whether that's in fitness or not. Like I think I come from a very goal-oriented like background that I want to continue like having that system. And like outside of like, let's say fitness, I'm working actually on like 2 e-commerce concepts, so that I will reveal in due time. But I think that's been a very interesting experience for me as well, completely new for me. And so we'll see how that goes. But definitely a lot of goals with that.
What is your dream job?
If I look back at like my life so far, my journey so far, I've done a lot of different things. And like, I think what stands out to me about my time in swimming is that I did one thing for a very long time, and like that's what helped me like go further. Whereas like I guess in like school, like I always like math, I always like English, you know, like I was never on one side of the spectrum, which I think I'm in that phase right now too, where I'm dabbling a little bit in a lot of different things. And so I think while I don't have necessarily like or I'm not going to share necessarily like a concrete like goal, it's just that I want to kind of narrow down and really like hone in on one thing in my career. And I'm just trying to figure out which one's going to win out right now. So I feel like I'm at that time in my life where it's like the dance versus swimming. And I think I'm in that point right now, and we'll see where we end up. Maybe we'll chat again in 5 years and see what's changed.
My last question to you is, and I usually end every episode with this question, which is, what is your superpower?
I think like I don't know if this is like my secret sauce or if it's more about like my friends, but I have managed to assemble an amazing group of women around me, like in my life. And it's not only my friends, it's also like family and also just like other, you know, women that I look up to. I think that also is like maybe one of my superpowers is that I have an amazing group of women behind me, and I have always had an amazing group of women. And it's also like maybe like some advice too. I'd like, if you can get yourself a girl gang, like get one. I think it mostly speaks more on my friends than me, but I feel very like lucky and like privileged to have an amazing group of women in my life that I do.
Faye, you're so charming and so diplomatic, and also you're just so polite and lovely. Like, this was so nice to do with you, and honestly, like, Yani, I wish you the very best. I feel like you're in the middle of this transition, and you're like, my mom calls us pathfinding, where we're trying to figure out the next path for us, and we're open to so many things, and we're going to try and just eliminate and see, you know, if you do something, you'll be like, okay, I don't know if this is for me, but at least you'll know like if it is or if it isn't. And I love it because every time I'm lost, she's like, you're pathfinding, you're not lost. So that always makes me feel like, okay, so I'm moving forward even if I don't know I am. But that's been so helpful to me because I always feel like I'm trying, experimenting, and I feel like every 5 years our goals change, or every couple of years really. Like, where we are now is not where we were 3 years ago. So it's I just want you to know you have a huge fan base and a huge community that's following you and supporting you, and just appreciates you for being yourself, whether you're swimming or not. You know, it's just your personality is really cool. So this has been awesome. Thank you so much. This is really cool.
I had an absolute blast, and like definitely if you're in Kuwait or California and I'm there, please hit me up and we'll get coffee or smoothies or whatever you like. But this was lovely, and I feel like there was a lot I learned from this podcast, and like a lot of things that you pointed out for me that I was like, oh wow, yeah, never thought about it in that way. And it was a very good fun time that I had, and like it was lovely to meet you.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Women Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Women Power Podcast and Women Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.